Dean Martin left behind a massive fortune that made his family cry. They called him Mr. Cool. Dean Martin, the man with the golden voice, the charming smile, and a drink always in his hand. To the world, he was effortless, the ultimate symbol of laid-back success. But when Dean Martin passed away on Christmas Day in 1995, the world lost more than a star. Fans everywhere mourned the singer and comedian whose easy smile and smooth voice defined what it meant to be cool for generations. But here's what most people never knew. Behind that relaxed image was one of Hollywood's smartest money minds. Dean Martin wasn't just a performer. He was a quiet financial genius who built a fortune so cleverly planned that when his family discovered the truth, they were left speechless and in tears of gratitude. A business associate who worked with Dean for over 30 years once revealed, the real Dean Martin was nothing like the guy you saw on stage. The world saw a man who made success look effortless, but behind the scenes, Dean was focused, disciplined, and always thinking ahead, carefully building a financial empire, one smart move at a time. Today, we're diving into the secret fortune Dean Martin built over his incredible 6-decade career, the hidden investments, the properties, and the financial strategy he used to protect his family long after he was gone. And the most surprising part? It's not just how much money he left behind, though it's said to be far more than the $30 to $40 million people once thought. It's how he built it. While his Rat Pack friends like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. lived fast and spent freely, Dean quietly invested in things that kept growing in value long after he stopped performing. But before we uncover the secrets of his empire, let's rewind. Let's look at how a boy named Dino Paul Cressetti from Steubenville, Ohio, developed a money mindset that totally clashed with his fun-loving image and why his biggest financial moves stayed hidden for so many years.
I don't know, go ahead, you had something else?
I have nothing.
Maybe Dean Martin's greatest performance wasn't on stage or in front of a camera. It was the one he gave in real life. For decades, he played the role of the carefree entertainer who seemed to care more about golf and good times than business. But that was part of the act. Behind the charm and the cocktails was a man with razor-sharp financial discipline and a long-term plan few ever saw. Dean's money smarts started early. Growing up during the Great Depression in a tough working-class neighborhood, he saw his parents work themselves to the bone for almost nothing. That experience left a mark. It taught him how fragile security could be and how important it was to build something that lasted. From then on, Dean promised himself he'd create real stability, not just for him, but for generations of his family. And while the world saw a carefree performer with a drink in his hand, behind the scenes, Dean was tracking every dollar, studying investments, and planning for the future. His accountant once revealed, Dean lived way below his means. While other stars splurged on mansions and luxury cars, Dean kept things simple. His Beverly Hills home was nice, but not flashy. He drove the same car for years, dressed sharply but modestly, and lived with quiet discipline. That same discipline shaped his career choices too. Dean was a master negotiator. Instead of chasing the biggest paycheck, he focused on what really mattered: ownership. While most stars were thrilled just to get paid, Dean was thinking ahead about royalties, residuals, and long-term rights to his work. Most people in show business back then wanted fast money and instant fame. But Dean Martin, he played the long game. His choices built something incredible, a steady stream of money that still supports his family today. And maybe the biggest surprise of all? Dean's relationship with alcohol. The man everyone thought was always drinking wasn't. That boozy, laid-back image was mostly an act. Sure, Dean enjoyed a drink now and then, but the glass in his hand on stage, most of the time, it was filled with apple juice. One of his longtime crew members confirmed it. Dean knew exactly what his audience wanted: the fun, tipsy entertainer, and he gave them that show every night. But once the lights went out and the real business started, Dean was sharp, focused, and strategic. He made his smartest money moves while everyone else was distracted by the act. That gap between who people thought he was and who he really was gave him the freedom to quietly build a massive fortune, one so well planned that when his family finally discovered the full picture, they were brought to tears. There's a story that perfectly captures his genius. One night, someone asked Dean, "Do you gamble?" He smiled and said, "No, I want to be paid right now."
Girl, I said, "Do you gamble?" She says, "No, I want to be paid right now."
That mindset led to his biggest financial move ever, the deal that changed everything. In the 1960s, Dean made a bold choice in Las Vegas that everyone thought was crazy, but in time, it became legendary. Dean Martin didn't just perform in Las Vegas. He changed the way the business worked. He quietly pioneered the modern Las Vegas residency model, but with a clever twist that few saw coming. A former casino executive from the Sands remembered, while other stars wanted huge guaranteed paychecks, Dean asked for something different, a smaller payment up front, but a piece of the casino itself. To everyone else, it looked like a mistake. Why take less money now? But Dean saw what others didn't, that the real money in Las Vegas wasn't in singing, it was in the casinos and the land they stood on. So while others chased quick paydays, Dean was quietly signing contracts that gave him small ownership stakes in several Las Vegas properties. At first, those shares seemed insignificant, tiny fractions in casinos that weren't worth much yet. But as Vegas exploded into a global entertainment hub, those tiny fractions turned into gold mines. When big corporations began buying up casinos in the 1980s and 1990s, they had to buy out Dean's ownership shares. And that's when the genius of his plan became clear. Those little stakes he'd taken decades earlier were suddenly worth millions. By the time he passed away, Dean held equity in 6 major Las Vegas properties. One of his original positions, worth just $150,000 in the 1960s, was eventually bought out for over $12 million in the 1990s. That's the kind of long game Dean Martin played. While others thought in years, he thought in decades. His philosophy was simple: own something. Don't just get paid for it. Look for value where others don't, and hold on until the world catches up. Years later, when his family finally uncovered the full extent of his Las Vegas investments, they were stunned. One family friend said, when they saw how carefully he had built everything, it was overwhelming. His daughter Deanna broke down in tears when she realized the truth. Her father wasn't just a charming entertainer with a drink in his hand. He was a financial genius, playing a long, strategic game no one saw coming. That discovery changed how the family saw him forever, not just as a star who left them comfortable, but as a visionary who built generational wealth decades ahead of his time. And that was only part of Dean's brilliance. His biggest money move wasn't in Vegas, it was in television. The Dean Martin Show, 1965 to 1974, and the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts still generate income today. How? Because Dean made a deal that was unheard of back then. Instead of letting the networks own his shows, he created his own company, Claude Productions, and kept the rights himself. An entertainment lawyer explained, most stars back then were just employees. Dean owned his content, the shows, the rights, everything. That decision continues to pay off. His shows are still broadcast and streamed around the world, bringing in millions for his family, proof that Dean Martin wasn't just cool on stage. He was one of Hollywood's smartest businessmen. At the time, Dean's approach looked strange, maybe even risky. Most stars were happy to take big paychecks from TV networks and leave the business side to others. But Dean wanted something different. Instead of just getting paid as a performer, he insisted on owning what he created. Back then, that was bold. TV syndication was new, and no one could imagine things like DVDs or streaming. People wondered, why take on all that risk when NBC is offering huge money? But Dean saw the future before anyone else. He believed his shows would keep earning money long after they first aired, and he was right. When cable TV exploded in the 1980s and needed shows to fill airtime, Dean's programs became gold. Then came DVDs, another wave of income, and now streaming platforms like Netflix and Amazon keep the cash flowing. Here's the brilliant part. Every time one of Dean's shows is licensed for streaming, TV, or any broadcast, most of the money goes to his estate, not the networks or studios. That's incredibly rare. Normally, corporations make the big bucks, while actors get small residuals. Dean flipped that system completely. Even more impressive, he did it decades before other stars demanded ownership of their shows. His strategy built a money machine that still pays millions every year, more than 25 years after his death. When his family finally saw the full financial report, they were moved to tears. They realized their father hadn't just built a career, he had built a legacy that would care for his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. The shows Dean Martin made in the 1960s and 70s are still earning money today and will likely keep doing so for generations. Behind his relaxed, joking image was a man with razor-sharp business instincts and a plan that stood the test of time. Everyone saw Dean Martin as the cool, carefree guy who just showed up, sang a few songs, and had fun. But behind that easy smile, he was quietly building a money-making empire, one that would keep growing long after he was gone. His secret weapon? Ownership. Dean's music career gave the world timeless hits like That's Amore and Everybody Loves Somebody. But the real genius wasn't just in the music, it was in how he owned it. The way he structured his music rights was decades ahead of its time. A music publishing expert said, Dean was doing in the 1960s what today's biggest stars are still fighting for. While other singers chased quick paychecks from record sales, Dean focused on owning his songs, his recordings, and even the arrangements that made them famous. This strategy often confused people around him. To them, he looked stubborn, even foolish, for walking away from big deals. But Dean had rules. If a contract didn't protect his ownership rights, he wouldn't sign. A former Capitol Records executive revealed that Dean turned down huge offers because they didn't meet his standards. Even Frank Sinatra told him he was crazy for rejecting a deal over tiny reversion rights details. Dean just laughed and said, "Maybe I am, but my kids won't think so." And he was right. Decades later, those same music rights became gold mines. Today, investment companies spent hundreds of millions buying catalogs like Dean's. He built his music portfolio like a Wall Street investor, long before streaming or Spotify made old songs valuable again. Dean Martin wasn't just a singer. He was a quiet genius in business. While most stars chased fast money, Dean played the long game. He spread his investments across different rights, kept control of his biggest assets, and made sure his work would keep earning long after he was gone. And it worked. His catalog is still a gold mine today, not just because of nostalgia, but because his music connects with every generation. You've probably heard "Ain't That a Kick in the Head" in Hollywood movies or commercials. Every time it's used, the Martin family earns money. Even his Christmas songs bring in steady income every holiday season. When the family recently saw the full valuation of his music catalog, they were stunned. What they once thought was a small part of his legacy turned out to be worth tens of millions and still growing. His son, Richie, was blown away when he learned the catalog's value had risen more than 800% since Dean's death. But Dean's smart moves didn't stop at music. Behind his easygoing image, he was making calculated decisions. Buying rights, predicting trends and thinking decades ahead. And hidden in plain sight was another surprise, a massive real estate portfolio Dean quietly built while everyone watched him perform on stage. Dean had an incredible eye for property. He didn't just buy fancy homes to show off. He bought smart. A property developer who worked with him said, Dean had a rare instinct for spotting places that would explode in value years later. In the 1950s and 60s, while most Hollywood stars were obsessed with Beverly Hills, Dean was buying land in Malibu, Palm Springs, and Aspen long before they became celebrity hotspots. He wasn't chasing status, he was building the future.
Instead of flashy mansions, Dean focused on properties with real potential. Land that could be developed, commercial buildings that generated income, and homes in areas poised to boom. A real estate expert said, Dean bought like a professional investor, not a celebrity showing off his success. One of Dean Martin's smartest moves was in Las Vegas. In the 1960s, when the Strip was still surrounded by empty desert, Dean started quietly buying land around it. Those plots were cheap back then, just tens of thousands of dollars. But today, they're worth tens of millions. A Las Vegas real estate analyst put it best. Dean saw where the city was heading before anyone else did. He didn't think in years, he thought in decades. That was the real genius of Dean Martin. Behind the charm and jokes, he was building a fortune, one smart property at a time. Beyond his fame, Dean created a real estate empire that still supports his family. He owned apartment buildings in Southern California, commercial properties across the Southwest, and even restaurants and retail spaces that generated steady cash flow for years. When his family reviewed his estate records, they were stunned. Dean had kept handwritten journals for every property he bought, noting why he purchased it, what he believed its future potential was, and which family member should manage it after he was gone. A family friend recalled, when the grandchildren saw how carefully everything had been set up for them, they cried. They realized the man they thought was just a performer had spent decades building a safety net for their future. Dean Martin's public image was carefree, but his real-life approach was the opposite. While others lived for the spotlight, he was planning for generations. And his foresight didn't stop at real estate. His investment philosophy went completely against Hollywood norms. While entertainers chased quick money and risky trends, he focused on long-term value. A financial advisor who worked with him in the 70s and 80s said, Dean was basically doing Warren Buffett-style investing before most people even knew who Warren Buffett was. He looked for companies with strong fundamentals, steady earnings, and real value, and held them for the long term. No flashy gambles, no get-rich-quick moves, just smart, patient investing that quietly paid off over time. Unlike many celebrities who lost fortunes in high-risk ventures, Dean invested only in businesses he understood: food, drinks, hotels, and consumer products. He had an incredible eye for spotting solid companies before they became household names. An investment banker who reviewed his portfolio said he could see value long before everyone else did. He bought early into McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Disney, long before they became global giants. He believed in the power of trusted brands and customer loyalty before that became common investment wisdom. But what truly set him apart wasn't just what he invested in, it was how. He was patient. Once he bought a company, he held on to it. No panic selling, no chasing trends. He let time and compound growth quietly build his wealth year after year. His advisors often urged him to sell and take profits, but Dean would just smile and say, if it was worth buying, it's worth keeping. Some of those stocks stayed in his portfolio for more than 30 years, earning him far more than any short-term trades ever could. That same long-term mindset shaped how he planned for his family's future. Instead of simply handing out money, Dean created family investment partnerships, financial ecosystems designed to teach each branch of his family how to grow wealth responsibly. An estate planner who helped set them up said, "These weren't just about transferring money, they were about transferring wisdom." Each partnership came with written rules based on Dean's principles: patience, discipline, and long-term thinking. He wanted his family not just to inherit his fortune, but the mindset that built it. The real shock came when his family saw how well his investments had performed. His quiet, steady strategy had outpaced many professional money managers. Even as markets rose and fell, Dean's approach kept winning. One moment hit especially hard for his daughter Gail. She cried when she saw the report comparing her father's results to the experts. Over 30 years, Dean's patient strategy had beaten them all. It proved that his quiet wisdom was more powerful than Wall Street's noise. People saw Dean as the life of the party, relaxed, funny, always in the moment. But behind that charm was a man thinking decades ahead. His legacy wasn't luck. It was patience, discipline, and foresight. And just when everyone thought they knew all of Dean's business brilliance, another surprise emerged no one saw coming. Beyond his music and TV rights, his estate uncovered a hidden collection of trademarks, image rights, and character licenses that became incredibly valuable in today's digital world. Dean was decades ahead of his time, said an attorney who manages celebrity estates. Back in the 1970s, when most stars only cared about performing, he was protecting his image, trademarking his name, and building a brand that would outlive him. A brand licensing expert later said, "What's amazing is that Dean did all this before there was even a market for such rights." He was betting on the future, believing technology would someday create new ways to profit from his image. That bet paid off. Today, in the digital age, Dean's name and likeness are more valuable than ever. His smooth voice, charm, and performance style live on through apps, virtual concerts, and digital media. As one executive put it, it's like Dean knew where entertainment was heading decades before anyone else did. The legal structures he built allow his estate to keep benefiting from technologies he couldn't have imagined, yet somehow predicted. But what touched his family most wasn't just the money. It was realizing how deeply Dean cared about protecting both his legacy and them. Among his old notes, his son, Dean Paul, found handwritten pages from the 1970s where his father imagined a future where audiences could experience his performances through formats that didn't even exist yet. That discovery brought tears to Dean Paul's eyes. It revealed that behind the carefree, joking man the world saw on TV was a father and businessman quietly planning for generations to come. Dean Martin's smart business moves are still paying off today. His name, voice, and image continue to earn money through ads, merchandise, movies, and digital media deals. Because he made sure everything was legally protected, no one can misuse his image, and his family still benefits from every legitimate project tied to his legacy.
An entertainment lawyer once said, Dean basically wrote the rule book for how celebrities should protect their image. And it's true. The system he built decades ago still shapes how estates manage famous names today. Dean Martin didn't just think about fame. He thought about legacy. His careful planning allows his family to control how his image is used, while opening doors to new media opportunities. It's the perfect blend of honoring his memory and creating lasting wealth. But what truly moved his family came later. When they went through his financial records, they weren't just amazed by the size of his fortune. They were touched by the love and thought behind every decision. Dean hadn't simply built wealth. He had built a roadmap for his family's future. His trust wasn't a simple divide the money and move on plan. It was deeply personal, a reflection of each family member's dreams, strengths, and struggles. A trust lawyer who reviewed it once said, What makes Dean's estate planning so special isn't just how smart it is financially, it's how emotionally intelligent it is. Dean seemed to understand every person in his family, what made him happy, what held them back, and what might one day help them thrive. It was as if he wrote individual life guides for each of them. While most celebrity trusts focus on taxes or inheritances, Dean went further, creating something that protected his loved ones not just financially, but emotionally and purposefully. He didn't just leave behind money, he left behind intention. For the dreamers, the artists, singers, and creatives, he set aside resources to keep their passions alive. For the practical-minded, he built funds to help them start businesses. And for those who might stumble along the way, he designed safety nets, ones that offered support without ever taking away their independence. As one estate expert said, Dean somehow found the perfect balance between structure and freedom. His trusts weren't just legal documents, they were reflections of his values, filled with compassion, flexibility, and understanding. They gave direction, but also allowed room for growth. It was a modern, human approach to passing on wealth, one that respected both his wishes and his family's individuality. Even the structure of his trust was unique. Dean didn't hand over total control to lawyers. Instead, he created something he called a family council system. It brought his descendants together, giving them a voice in key decisions. Professionals guided them, but the family made the choices. It wasn't just about money. It was about teaching them how to manage it wisely. The most emotional moment came during a family meeting, when the entire plan was revealed for the first time. One witness said, "You could feel the emotion in the room." One by one, his children and grandchildren began to understand how deeply Dean had thought about each of them, predicting challenges they hadn't even faced yet, and leaving words of comfort they hadn't known they needed. Tears filled the room. Behind the entertainer's famous smile, they saw the heart of a man who loved his family enough to plan for their futures, not just their fortunes. Then came the final surprise. A stack of sealed envelopes. Each one held a personal letter from Dean, written years earlier, to be opened at special moments in their lives. Birthdays, weddings, milestones. These weren't business notes. They were love letters, full of guidance, wisdom, and reassurance. To the world, Dean Martin was cool, confident, and carefree. But to his family, he was something much more. A man who listened, who noticed, and who cared deeply. One of the most touching stories came from his granddaughter. On her 30th birthday, she opened a letter he had written long before she was born. Somehow it spoke directly to the struggles she was facing at that moment. A family friend said, it felt like he was still here, guiding her. That combination, emotional comfort and practical support, is what truly defined Dean's legacy. He didn't just perform for crowds. He looked after the people who mattered most, even from beyond the grave. Dean once said, "In my business, everybody's always watching, but very few are really seeing." His estate plan proved that while the world watched Dean Martin as a celebrity, he was quietly watching over his family, seeing them clearly, understanding them deeply, and building a legacy that continues to care for them long after he's gone. Dean Martin's voice may have faded from the stage, but his influence still sings, not just through the songs we remember, but through the lives he touched and the legacy he designed with so much heart.